In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers vanished in the frozen Ural Mountains. When rescuers found their campsite, the tent had been sliced open from the inside. Their bodies were scattered across the snow. Some were barefoot, some were missing eyes. One was missing her tongue. And to this day, nobody knows why they ran into the darkness. The expedition was led by Igor Dyatlov. He was a 23-year-old radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. He was considered experienced in winter expeditions, and he had already completed difficult hiking trips in the past. The goal of this expedition was to reach Otterton Mountain, a remote mountain located deep within the northern Ural Mountains. The route was considered difficult, and completing it would earn the group a high-level hiking certification. The expedition originally included 10 members, 8 men and 2 women. Most of them were students or graduates from the same institute, and nearly all had previous experience with skiing and winter survival. The group included Zenaida Kolmogorova, Lyudmila Dubinina, Rustem Slobodin, Georgy Krivonyshenko, Yuri Doroshenko, and several others who would later become part of one of history's most discussed mysteries. Before the group reached the most dangerous stage of the trip, one member began experiencing severe health issues. That member was Yuri Yudin. He developed severe joint pain and struggled to continue traveling. Eventually, he made the decision to turn back. He said goodbye to the rest of the group and returned home. At the time, it seemed like an unfortunate end to his expedition. But Yuri Yudin would later become the only member of the group to survive. And for the rest of his life, he searched for answers about what happened to his friends. In late January of 1959, the group officially began their expedition toward the northern Ural Mountains. Their journey started by train. They traveled for long hours across the Soviet Union before eventually arriving in the town of Ivdel. From there, they continued their journey by truck. The truck transported them to the small settlement of Vizhai. Vizhai was one of the final inhabited settlements before the wilderness began. Beyond this point, there were very few signs of civilization. After arriving, the group prepared their ski equipment and supplies. They carried food, extra clothing, camping equipment, cameras, journals, and supplies needed to survive in extreme winter conditions. Once everything was prepared, the group began skiing deeper into remote mountain terrain. The weather quickly became more difficult. Temperatures dropped well below freezing. Snow became deeper, and traveling became slower. Despite this, the group appeared to remain in good spirits. Photographs recovered later showed them smiling, laughing, and joking with each other during the expedition. They documented much of the trip through photographs and written journal entries. They recorded route progress, weather conditions, and daily events. At one point, worsening snowfall made navigation significantly harder. Visibility became poor. Strong winds reduced their ability to see clearly, and the group slowly drifted off their intended route. By February 1st, they had reached the slopes of Kolatsyakhl. Rather than moving back toward nearby forest for shelter, they stopped and set up camp on an exposed mountainside. It would be the final campsite of the expedition. By February 1st, 1959, the group had reached the slopes of Kolatsyakhl. The weather had become significantly worse. Strong winds reduced visibility, and heavy snowfall made navigation increasingly difficult. Investigators later believed the group had drifted west of their planned route. Rather than moving downhill toward the protection of nearby forest, they made the decision to set up camp on an exposed slope. The area offered little protection from wind, and temperatures continued falling as night approached. The group began setting up their tent. One of the final photographs recovered from their camera appears to show them building camp in worsening weather conditions. After finishing camp, the group likely followed their normal routine. They changed clothes, prepared food, and settled in for the night. Their journals ended, their cameras stopped recording, and no one knows exactly what happened next. At some point during the night, all 9 hikers left the tent. Investigators later discovered that the tent had been cut open from the inside. Rather than using the main entrance, someone used a knife to cut through the fabric. When rescuers later examined the campsite, they found boots still inside. Heavy winter clothing remained inside. Food was untouched, and personal belongings were left behind. Nearly everything they needed to survive remained inside that tent. Footprints were later discovered leading away from the campsite. The prints moved downhill toward nearby forest. Some appeared barefoot, some showed socks, and others showed only a single shoe. Whatever happened that night caused 9 experienced hikers to leave the safety of their tent and walk into freezing darkness. When the group failed to return on schedule, their families initially weren't alarmed. Delays were common during winter expeditions, and experienced hikers often returned later than expected. But as more time passed, concern began to grow. Eventually, relatives contacted Ural Polytechnic Institute. Search teams were organized, students volunteered, teachers joined the effort, and later, military personnel were brought in. Planes and helicopters were also used to search the massive wilderness. Days later, search teams discovered the group's abandoned tent. It was partially buried in snow and badly damaged. Investigators discovered that the tent had been cut open from the inside. Inside the tent, they found boots, warm clothing, food, cameras, and personal belongings. Nearly everything the group needed to survive had been left behind. Search teams then followed the footprints leading away from the campsite. The trail led them downhill toward a nearby forest. There, they discovered the first 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. They were found near the remains of a small fire. Both were barefoot and dressed in very little clothing. Investigators also noticed broken branches high in a nearby cedar tree. This suggested one of them may have climbed the tree, possibly trying to look back toward the campsite. The mystery was only beginning. As search teams continued investigating the area, they discovered 3 more bodies between the cedar tree and the abandoned tent. Igor Dyatlov was found first. His body was positioned facing back toward the campsite, as if he had been trying to return. Soon after, researchers found Zenaida Komogorova. She was located farther up the slope, also facing toward the tent. Then investigators found Rustem Slobodin. He was discovered between the others. Like the rest, he appeared to be moving back toward camp. Investigators believed these 3 may have attempted to return to the tent after reaching the forest. But they never made it. Their official causes of death were largely linked to hypothermia. But the investigation was far from over. 4 members of the group were still missing, and winter conditions made searching extremely difficult. Weeks passed, then months. Snow continued covering the mountain. Search teams were forced to wait for conditions to improve. Finally, as in May of 1959, search teams returned, and what they found raised even more questions. 4 members of the expedition were still missing. Weeks turned into months. Heavy snow made search efforts nearly impossible. Search teams were forced to wait until conditions improved. In May of 1959, investigators returned to continue searching the mountain. Eventually, they discovered the remaining 4 hikers. Their bodies were found in a ravine nearly 75 meters deeper into the forest. They were buried beneath several feet of snow. Unlike the first 5 victims, these hikers showed far more severe injuries. Lyudmila Dubinina had major chest trauma. Semyon Zolotaryov also suffered massive chest injuries. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had significant skull fractures, and investigators discovered that Lyudmila Dubinina was missing her tongue. Some victims were also missing soft tissue around their eyes. Medical experts later stated that some injuries resembled the force of a serious car crash. But investigators found no signs of external attack, no evidence of gunshots, and no indication that another group had attacked them. Even stranger, some clothing recovered from the victims showed traces of radiation. Witnesses in nearby areas also reported seeing unusual lights in the sky during the same period. The case was becoming increasingly difficult to explain. Following the discovery of the final 4 bodies, Soviet investigators attempted to determine exactly what had happened on Kholat Syakhl. Early theories suggested the hikers may have been attacked by local Mansi tribesmen, but investigators quickly dismissed that theory. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of robbery, and no footprints from anyone outside the group. Eventually, Soviet officials closed the case. Their final explanation stated that the hikers died because of a compelling natural force. The exact meaning was never clearly explained, and for decades, many documents connected to the case remained unavailable to the public. That lack of answers created countless theories. Some believed it was an avalanche. Others believed the group may have witnessed secret Soviet military testing. Some pointed to the strange orange lights seen in the sky, and others created theories involving everything from secret experiments to paranormal explanations. In 2020, Russian authorities officially concluded that an avalanche was the most likely explanation. They argued that severe weather conditions may have forced the group out of their tent, but many people still question that conclusion, especially because of the unusual injuries, the missing tongue, and the unanswered details that continue to surround the case. More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of history's most famous unsolved mysteries, and whatever happened on that mountain may never be fully understood.